Bonjour everyone, welcome to today's video where I transform a men's shirt into a woman's top. This top that I'm wearing, it is a very plain, simple, basic, beginner-friendly top. I did wish I added a bit more sophistication to it, at least around the neck or something, because I feel like black is that color, or darker colors in general, they tend to make one look more mature. But if it's not cut to your body type, your structure, your essence, your style, it can make you look mature in a negative way versus a more sophisticated look or a healthy mature look. So I wish I added that sophistication to it. I feel like that would have been more suited for my body type. But when you're flipping clothes, you are limited, I feel, in some way to what you can do. You have to just work with what you have. I do feel like if your strength is in designing, then you are less limited, but my strength is in more stitching and sewing. So I do my best. I work with what I have. So this is what we have. For this project, I did not use any pattern. I freehanded everything. I used measurements for that. I did not use any sewing machine or a sewing machine. I hand sewn everything. My goal is to actually do a few tutorials on hand sewing projects because I want to inspire people who don't have a sewing machine, who can't use a sewing machine because they have not learned, or who don't like sewing machine because of the noise or can't afford one, to know that you can still make clothes without a sewing machine. I feel like you can do anything that you want without a sewing machine, honestly. So I'll be sharing some tutorials on hand sewing with woven fabrics and stretchy fabrics. Because my recent videos have been on hand sewing stitches anyway, so I feel like it's just a good idea to just show you how to apply all these stitches, how to use them, and create whatever projects you want when it comes to hand sewing. So stay tuned for upcoming videos on hand sewing, but this one is more of a thrifted transformation, even though it's not a thrifted piece, but it's a transformation, it's a flip, so that's what it is. Yeah, take a guess at how long it actually took me to make this. I will reveal at the end of the video how long it took. Whatever you think your guess is, double it, because I had to French seam all of the seam allowances because the fabric frays a lot, and so that's the only way I could get a more polished look on the inside. So I like how this look on the inside and outside. I just don't think it's my style personally. That's a journey that I have yet to continue on, but it will take place eventually. But anyways, let's get into the video now. All right, so here's my shirt, and I have my front panels, my back that doesn't have a seam to it, so I'll be using that for the front and cutting it on fold. So I'm just cutting my pieces here, removing the front from the back, removing the sleeves and the pockets and all the pieces, so I can just have the front pieces and the back and work with those for now. Here I have my pieces cut out, separated from each other. My back piece is on the fold because I'll be using that for my front piece and cut on fold. I have the right sides facing each other so that I'm marking on the wrong side. So here I am marking for my shoulder to shoulder measurement. I wanted to add some ease to my original measurement, which is about 15 inches. My fabric width here measures 8.5 inches, so that gives me a total of 17 inches for my shoulder to shoulder measurement, and that includes my seam allowance as well. So it's really not that much ease. And so here I am marking down 1 inch from that measurement, and from the center back I mark my neck measurement, which is my neck circumference divided by 5, and I mark the same measurement down as well from that point, and then mark it across as well. From there, I am going to trace my neck using my curve ruler, and then I will be marking my curve for the back piece as well on that same piece. And for my back curve, neck curve, I just go 1 inch down from that center back mark, and I am going to draw my curve for the back of the neck. Next, I connect my neck point to the 1 inch mark that I drew down from the shoulder line, the original shoulder line. So that's my true shoulder line now. I decided to just use the entire length of from my neck point as the length of my shirt. So that's what I'm doing here, just marking the entire length because it was not that much. And here I am marking my neck to bust point measurement. That's what I'm marking here. And I draw a line from that point across on my fabric. And I'm going to connect my shoulder to that line. And from there, I am going to mark my underarm point. So I go 3/4 of an inch up from that bust point line, and somewhere along the length of that line, I'm marking half an inch in just to create some sort of curve. And then I'm going to use my curve ruler to connect my underarm point to my shoulder point. What I could have done next would be to measure my bust measurement on that bust point line, but I did not even measure my bust measurement. I simply just connected my underarm point all the way down onto my fabric. But it would be wise to do so. But because I have a smaller bust, that worked out for me without measuring my bust measurement because I already have some width going on with my shoulder to shoulder measurement, having that ease added to it already. Because my original shoulder to shoulder measurement is about 15 inches, and what I decided to use as the entire width of my fabric, it is 17 inches. So I have some ease going on, which accommodated my bust. I brought my front piece out because I wanted to create some seam allowances at the back because I will be sewing down the center back since it's not a cut on fold. That is why I brought the front pieces towards me. After cutting out the main pieces of my top, I took some scrap fabric to create facing for my neckline. So I took the scrap fabric, and because I need two pieces for the back, I folded it whichever way I could to get the length or width that I needed for my facing. And I just placed it underneath the piece and cut along the curve of the neck because I have my seam allowance at the neck. So then it creates my seam allowance also on the facing. And next I'm gonna use my chalk and measuring tape to mark out the width of my facing all along the curve. So now I'm using my pieces that I just cut out for the neckline facing, and I'm going to use them to cut out my interfacing that I'll be adding onto them. So that's what I'm doing here. Now what I have here is my sleeves that I had cut out from the original shirt. I am going to use those sleeves to cut out my shallow sleeve that I added to my shirt. And I did end up deciding to layer it up to just add a bit more detail because the top is so plain, but I don't think that made any difference. So at my center back here, I am going to mark my neckline opening or just some opening at the back so that I can fit my top over my head. And I don't think I marked more than 3 inches. So I just pretty much freestyle the entire top, in my opinion. So these are my facings that I attached to the interfacing, and then I went and ironed them on and fused them together, and so that's what I have. With that trim that I had on my original shirt, I decided to retrieve those pieces back so that I can use them as an extra layer to my sleeve just to make it more interesting. But like I said, I don't feel like that made much of a difference because the sleeve hangs off my shoulder, so it's not as visible. But that's pretty much what I use those pieces for. Now that I have all the pieces that I needed cut out, it's time for the fun part, time to sew. And I decided to use a blue thread just to show my stitches better, except for the hemline where I use a matching thread, as well as some areas of the back. I mainly use backstitch for most of my seams that I sewed for this project. So here I am putting the center back together. I am currently sewing on the right side of the fabric, and I am sewing at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance currently because I will be flipping it around, flipping it inside to sew on the wrong side and complete that French seam. So that's what I'm doing here. So my center back is sewn and now I flip it. This is the inside of my fabric, the wrong side that you're looking at. Now I am going to sew along that seam again to complete that French seam. So it's a bit more than 1/8 of an inch here, but that worked out for me. And the marking that you saw on my fabric was because I initially wanted to do an elastic waist, but I changed my mind on that. So my center back is all done and I am now going to connect my front piece to my back now, and I am going to do the same thing to do a French seam. I am going to put the wrong sides together and sew along the right side, and then I am going to flip it and then sew over that seam on the wrong side. That's what I'll be doing. This is the result after connecting my front piece to my back piece, and I was loving what I was seeing. I liked how neat it was looking on the inside. Next, it was time to connect the shoulder pieces together and do the same thing. I am going to sew along the right side of my fabric So I have the wrong sides facing each other so that I can sew on the right side. And then once I do my 1/8 inch seam allowance there, I flip it inside out, or outside in, and then I sew over that seam again to create my French seam. To understitch my facing, I use the overlocked hem stitch because that helped me keep the fraying under control. So that's why I use that stitch here. It is far from perfect. I was very careless in doing it, but it is what it is. It worked out. It's on the inside as well, so it didn't bother me that much. And to finish it off, for the edge here, because of the fraying, I did the overlap stitch. So that looks a bit wonky because in the midst of it, I was making decisions, trying to do it different ways because there was a point where I decided I did not want to see the edge at all, and I changed my mind a lot throughout that. So I used hook and eye to attach the back as attachment at the back. That's what you're seeing here, and my neck line is done. And for my sleeves here, I am going to do the same thing with the French seam. I am going to put the wrong sides facing each other so that I can sew on the right sides, and then I will flip it and sew on the wrong sides to finish off the French seam. So this is what my finished sleeve looked like on the inside. And of course, there were some mistakes. I missed a layer of the few layers I had to sew through, and that happened, but it's not that bad in my opinion. And of course, you can see on the inside how I had some skip stitches on some layers, but it still feel pretty strong, yet still comfortable as a top. So I am pretty sure that's gonna last for a while. My top is now almost done. All I need to do is to finish my hemline and I will be done with my top. This is my finished top, and overall, it took me 5 hours and 58 minutes to finish this. So I guess if you cut that time in half, maybe it's not so bad, but still, even if you cut it in half for such a basic top, it does take some time to hand sew. Hand sewing generally takes a long time, but I don't mind hand sewing. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed every process of this top. I love the finishing, even though there were some mistakes. I had no issues with that. I absolutely enjoy my time hand sewing. And I experienced no hand cramp. I understand that that's something some people deal with. Maybe I'll make a different video about it and talk about the possibility of hand sewing without any hand cramp. I love hand sewing. I can't imagine doing it in pain. So I will definitely address that in a different video. Honestly, just looking at the top makes me excited for the next project. But that's because sewing is more my thing. That's what I enjoy most when it comes to fashion activities versus the designing part. So, yeah, I like working on neat stitches, creating detail stitches. I just like that. I love it. So, yeah, stay tuned for the next few videos coming out on hand sewing.